Junior Cycle Higher Level 2014 Phase 3 Paper 2 Question 5. This is a statistics question and we're given a set of data, their words, and the first thing we're asked to do is to sort of clarify what sort of data it is. Well, since they're words, they're not going to be numerical, so it has to be categorical. And the question is, can they be ordered, i.e. put in an order? So, for example, exam grades A, B, C, D, or A1, A2, B1, B2, B3, and so forth could be ordered. But other words cannot be ordered, and I would suggest that cash, credit card, debit, apart from putting in alphabetical order, they cannot be put in order. Certainly putting them in order means nothing to the actual context, so in this case they're nominal. Moving on, we're asked to collect the data and put it into a frequency table. So we could do a little bit of a tally, I suppose, to a certain extent. With this, it's reasonably easy just to count them up, I suppose, as well. So if you're going to do a tally, you'd go, credit card, debit card, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Alternatively, we could just count them up. So credit 1, 2, 3, 4 seems to be all the number of credit cards. Debit cards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 debit cards. Cash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and check 1. Now, what it certainly is worthwhile doing at the end of it, we notice that they're a total sum of 20. And in terms of what we have here, we have a 4x5 grid of data, which is also 20. So I'd feel happy that that's the correct frequencies. Moving on, what's the mode of John's data? Well, mode is the one that appears most frequent. In this case, it's going to be cash. And the last question that's in this page, John says he cannot find the mean of the data. Explain why this is the case. Well, he's correct, and the reason being is that mean, if you think about the way in which you calculate the mean is appropriate for numerical data, where you add up all the data and divide by how many values you actually had, so it's the sum over the number. You can't add words, so you will not be able to work out the mean. Okay, so we have all the data, and we're now asked to draw a pie chart. So I should point out at this stage we have total of 20 values, and 4 credit card, 7 debit card, 8 cash, 1 check. So 4 out of 20 are the credit card. 7 out of 20 are debit, likewise for cash and check. So that's the fractions of your pie chart. Now, pie chart, that's all the pie chart is, it's just fractions. So what's a fraction of 360 degrees? 360 degrees being that full turn. So 4/20ths of 360 degrees, otherwise known as 1/5, okay, is 72 degrees. 7/20ths of 360 degrees is 126 degrees. 8/20ths of 360 degrees is 144 degrees, and 1/20th of 360 degrees is 18 degrees. And as a double check, it's worthwhile just double checking, do those 4 angles, do they actually add up to 360 degrees? Well, adding 72, 126, 144 and 18, you have to get your calculator out to check my working, but it is indeed 360 degrees. So I'd say I'm fairly certain that I have my angles correct. So then drawing the angles, obviously a pie chart, it's going to be a circle. You have your centre marked off, you draw your circle, you draw a radius as your starting point, and then you work your way around clockwise or anti-clockwise, marking off each of these angles that we've worked out, and drawing the line and then labelling each of the sector pie slices. And you should have a pie chart that looks something like that. What I would say to you normally when I draw a pie chart, I mark off my centre, I draw my circle around that centre using compasses, and then from that centre I draw a vertical line up to give me my first radius, and then what I would tend to do is I'd then measure my angles clockwise from there. So I'd measure off my 72 degrees, then I'd measure off my 126, working clockwise around, then 144, and then finally, obviously, I double check to make sure that this section here is indeed 18 degrees. And obviously what I would then do is I would also make sure that I actually labelled each of my sectors in a similar way to what they have done here. There's no need or requirement to write out your angles. There's no need to actually go, okay, this angle here is 72 degrees, this angle here is 126, etc., etc. As long as you have your workings elsewhere, they're not required. What is definitely required is that you label each sector with some sort of label. Moving on to part B, this is a question that describes a scenario where she wants to find out about different people's shopping preferences, and she stands outside of one shop to do that survey. And you're asked, why would her data possibly be biased? Well, very simply, if she's outside Lidl, she's going to have people who predominantly shop in Lidl, and therefore whatever data you collect will be skewed towards Lidl and away from the competitors Tesco, Dunnes and SuperValu. I've stated data from outside one relevant place. So it causes a bias in the sample selection since they shop in Lidl, and so are minded to shop in Lidl as opposed to other places. That's why they'll be biased. In part C, we have two different types of diagrams, and we're asked to comment on which would be better for showing a certain argument. So Mary wants to show that about half of her sample spent less than €40, so up to €40. So in the graphs, what we're talking about, on the pie chart, we're talking about this section here, all the people who spent between 0 and €40, and for the histogram we're looking at all of those up to 40. Now visually, what would be easier to show that about half of the sample spent less than €40? Well, I would argue that it would be the pie chart. And the reason would be that if you take the sectors from 0 up to 40, the angle that they add up to make is approximately 180 degrees, approximately half of the pie chart. And for part 2, Mary wants to show that there are more people in the 30 to 40 euro group than any other. Well, I would argue that the histogram is more appropriate. The reason being, if you look at the pie slice that relates to 30 to 40, it looks one of the larger sectors, but it's not easy to guarantee that it's definitely the largest. From my eyesight, it looks as though the 40 to 50 might be as big or bigger. Same with these other ones. You're not 100% certain that this sector here is definitely the largest. However, in your histogram, it is easy to see from the height that 30 to 40 is the tallest bar. It is the mode class interval for this data.